In this episode, you'll discover the single biggest mistake many people make that can ruin a Maui vacation and how you can avoid it. We'll get into the details most travelers overlook, from what to know about Lahaina's recovery to the hidden costs that catch most people by surprise. So if you're planning your first trip to Maui, you want to know what to skip, what to double check, and how to save yourself a lot of hassle. Let's go. Aloha and welcome to Hawaii's Best, the podcast helping travelers plan an unforgettable Hawaii vacation with insider tips and featuring local voices. I'm Brian Murphy, a husband, dad of 3, and certified Hawaii destination expert. Each week, I share local insights, travel tips, and up-to-date news, sometimes with guests across Hawaii and sometimes solo, all to help you plan your next trip to Hawaii. Aloha and welcome to episode 155 of Hawaii's Best. With school starting to wind down in the U.S. and people starting to look forward to summertime here in the Northern Hemisphere, I know a lot of people who listen are in Australia and gearing up for winter, but here in the U.S., we are getting ready for summer, and that means travel, probably Hawaii for a lot of people. And if you're planning your first trip to Maui, well, you're in the right spot, because in today's episode, you'll discover why many visitors get caught off guard by Maui's prices. I know we all know Maui can be expensive, Hawaii is expensive, but specifically Maui. So we're going to talk about that today. Talking about which parts of the island are open, talking specifically about Lahaina and what to know if you're going to be staying on the west side, which a lot of people do on Maui, and also about how missing a small detail in your planning can seriously impact your experience. By the end of today's episode, you'll know if you're making one of these common mistakes that many first-time visitors make when heading to Maui. And if you are, that's totally fine. That's why I'm putting this episode out, so you know how to fix it. A lot of it is just being aware of what to know prior to visiting, just to get rid of some of those surprises, so you can have a better sense of what to expect when visiting Maui. I've been to Hawaii many times, 30 plus maybe. I've lost track, honestly, but it doesn't really matter because I didn't visit Maui until my first time was back in 2019. So it's only 6 years ago. And I went with my wife and we recorded a bunch of podcasts there, and I'll link those below. We got to talk with the GM at Leilani's on the Beach, which is in Kaanapali. We spent some time with the Westin and had them on the podcast, as well as Garrett, the CEO, co-founder of Maui Brewing Company. Also got to spend some time in the Honoka'i Valley with Uncle Ikolu from Maui Cultural Lands. And all of those episodes I'll link below, and all of those really impacted me in a personal level, especially that time working in the Honoka'i Valley for the day. Just that experience alone showed me what makes Maui just so special. It's not just about the beaches, which are beautiful and one of a kind, and the resorts. It's really the culture and connection to the land. And as I'm talking, I'm getting chills just remembering that moment. It was really a special time, and I'll link those episodes below. You can probably hear my excitement in those 4 episodes. But today's episode, we're talking about your very first trip to Maui and what you need to know in 2025, not in 2019. And yes, we're going to talk about Lahaina. The town is definitely still recovering from the devastating fires. You'll understand what's open, what's closed, because there are some things open. If you've been listening to the show for a little bit, we talked about some of the spots that are open to eat in Lahaina, as well as the luau there. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But let's get into what you need to know before booking your trip to Maui. Some of you probably already have that ticket, and that's okay. I'm just going to go over what to know. A lot of people are planning. Maybe they're visiting later on this year, or maybe they're looking at 2026. But really the best times to visit Maui are April through May and September through October. These are the shoulder seasons. It gives you really great weather, fewer visitors, and better rates across the board from flights to hotels. Now, where do you stay? That depends on what kind of experience you want. South Maui, specifically Kihei, Wailea, offer family-friendly beaches and accommodations ranging from budget condos to luxury resorts. Think The White Lotus that was filmed over there in Wailea. West Maui, like Kaanapali, this is where we like to stay, and Napili, that's more up on the coast. Excellent resorts. Though Lahaina itself remains closed, it's important to know that the areas past Lahaina are open. If you want a quieter, more local experience, consider upcountry Maui or the North Shore. There's not a ton of options, but there are options, and they are available maybe a little bit less expensive than those big resorts. Hotel rates in 2025 have averaged around $368 per night from my research, while vacation rentals run about $333, substantially higher than continental U.S. prices. So definitely want to budget accordingly. When I researched those numbers, we're doing a road trip here pretty quick going up the coast. We're in Southern California, so we're going to do a coast, just kind of a local trip for us this summer. We're paying about those prices just to stay at like a Residence Inn, Marriott, or a Spring Hill Suites is about that $300. Pretty average. I mean, we're in Southern California, so prices are a little bit less than Hawaii, but not by much. Anyway, Lahaina update. As of May 2025, Lahaina remains closed to visitors. Unfortunately, there's been some videos going around where visitors have snuck into some of the closed off areas. And it sounds weird even saying this, but they've been video taking charred items from Lahaina homes, which is really unfathomable to do that. So know that's out there. The recovery is ongoing. It is slow. If you've seen anything, it has been slow. Only 20 homes have been rebuilt as of now. That's out of, the 2,000 or so that have been destroyed. Front Street, Lahaina Harbor, and most cultural sites are still off limits. Access is restricted to residents, construction crews, and official personnel only. Do not attempt to visit closed off areas. It's really obvious what is closed. It's not like a surprise. I'm sure you're listening to this podcast. You already are a considerate, kind person that's not going to go into a closed off area like Lahaina and steal stuff. I still can't believe that. Anyway, the rest of Maui is open. And like I said, there are spots in Lahaina. You just need to do your due diligence when you're there. There is Old Lahaina Luau that has reopened. Star Noodle is another spot that is open now. We talked about them on a previous episode about where to eat on Maui. I'll link that below as well. Just know the rest of Maui is open. Visitor numbers to Maui still haven't rebounded all the way, so your support there is definitely welcomed. But I think that's really all the update that I have on Lahaina. Now, I want to talk about the must-do activities, talked about, what you want to put on the itinerary, what you want to not worry about. So let's talk about some of that. I just want to pop in here and say if you found any value in listening to Hawaii's Best is to simply follow the podcast on the app you're using right now. If you're on Apple Podcasts, just tap that little follow button in the top right corner. It's that easy, and doing so helps more people like you who love Hawaii find the show. And now back to the episode. Haleakala National Park definitely should be on the top of that list. And the sunrise from the summit is amazing. I know you've probably seen those pictures, but it requires reservations made well in advance. So that's one of the things you want to make sure you reserve prior to going. And this, I would recommend doing the sunrise your first day or second day, because a lot of people who are visiting from the continental U.S. are 3 to, I think, 6 hours ahead of Hawaii time. So you're going to be waking up early. You're going to be waking up, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock or whatever. And it's like, might as well get that sunrise in. Our girls will wake up at, 3 a.m. And it's like, all right, well, I guess we're doing this. Plan for that. If you don't get reservations for sunrise, go for sunset, because the sunset is equally as beautiful on Haleakala. The Road to Hana is definitely iconic, and a lot of people go to Maui and do the Road to Hana. It's not just the drive. It's all day with amazing waterfalls, black sand beaches, rainforest hikes. It's just beautiful. One thing you want to make sure is you can't rush this experience. So consider planning well in advance. Maybe this is another thing you do that first, second, maybe third day on your trip, because you want to wake up early, especially if you're staying on the west side in Kaanapali. It's going to be a drive all the way up north to just get to the start of Rotohana. There are people who say you shouldn't drive the Rotohana. Maybe you should just do a certified guide. I would definitely recommend that, especially if you're doing Rotohana for the first time. If you're the one driving, it's going to be pretty stressful trying to do all the turns and making sure you're not parking where you're not supposed to be parking. A guided tour that is vetted and legit is going to be so much more enjoyable as far as being able to relax and take in the Rotohana, take in east side of Maui and just all the stops, because you're going to stop at all the same spots, but you're not going to have the headache of trying to find parking, making sure you're parking in the right spot. I actually did an episode all about that, and I'll link that in the show notes below. If you love the ocean, you love snorkeling, Molokini Crater is one of the top spots to do that. This crescent-shaped islet creates a natural aquarium with incredible visibility and diverse marine life. So book with a reputable company. We've done stuff with Four Winds to Maui. Definitely would recommend looking at their tours, but there's a lot of great companies out there. Four Winds to Maui, they also do a sunset cruise that we did, and it was beautiful. Had a hula performance, had great drinks, food. So look into them as an option. Some of the best beaches. Also, you got Kaanapali on the west side, which offers calmer waters and resort amenities. Makena Beach, which is Big Beach in South Maui, gives you that perfect postcard experience with fewer facilities though, but more natural beauty. For some culture, you want to visit the Ali'i Lavender Farm or the Maui Wine in Upcountry. Also up there is Ocean Vodka. They have an experience there too. Now, where to eat? We covered so much. My friend Liza Pierce and I, we covered so much on a 2-part series on where to eat on Maui. So I'm just going to give you a few of those spots, but also I want to encourage you to go back and listen to those episodes. Really, Maui's food scene can be budget friendly to extravagant, because there's tons of food trucks to consider, which are budget friendly. But for special occasions, Mama's Fish House, you can't beat it. It's one of those spots, but you got to have reservations. You got to make months in advance. So if you're on island and you didn't get reservations, your best bet would be to go for lunch, because lunch is going to be a bit easier to get in than dinner time. For a local plate lunch experience, I definitely would recommend Tin Roof in Kahului. You'll love it there. Amazing food. But also don't miss out on farmers markets for fresh produce and prepared foods for a fraction of restaurant prices. Now, when it comes to travel, logistics, and budgeting, you definitely want to budget to rent a car. Public transportation is limited on Maui, and ride shares are expensive and not always available. Book your rental months in advance. Cars regularly sell out during peak seasons. If you're staying on Maui for, I would say, more than a week, so maybe like 10, 14 days, look into some inter-island flights and do some puddle hopping. And those are always worth the time, because each island has its own completely different experiences. A short hop over from Maui to the Big Island is a quick flight, and you can do, Volcanoes National Park. You can do all that within a day and fly back over to Maui. Now, for accommodations, consider condos over hotels if you're staying more than a few days. The kitchen will help you save some money on meals, and you'll often get more space for less money on a certified condo. I also did an episode on how to vet your vacation rental, and I'll link that below too, because there are some shady practices out there, especially in Hawaii. You also want to book activities well before your trip. So think, helicopter tours, luau's, and whale watching cruises, which are usually between December and April to get some whale watching done. Those fill up fast though. You want to make sure you book those top activities. If you don't want to do any of those, then that's totally fine. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we go without any reservations and we just see where the day takes us. And, maybe we have like a little short list of what we want to do, but for the most part, there's so much to experience, so much natural beauty, especially on Maui, that if you don't have any reservations for any of those tours, there's still so much to do. Or maybe your budget is tight and you're not able to do those types of tours this time around, you're not going to feel like you're missing out on a lot. There's just so much more that you can explore and not break the bank, because you don't want to get back home and like look at that credit card bill and like, was it all worth it? So it's okay to skip those tours this time around, but maybe choose one of them if you're able to. When it comes to packing, the best tip I have for packing is don't overpack. I remember my first few times visiting Hawaii, some 20 some years ago, packed so much stuff and you're like, you barely use any of it because the weather pretty much stays the same. Sometimes you'll get wet, so maybe have a light jacket, but just don't overpack. You want to make sure you pack that reef safe sunscreen, or if you don't have reef safe sunscreen, just buy sunscreen in Hawaii, because then it is legal and legit, because there are some banned chemicals that are in most sunscreens. Those are banned in Hawaii. So there's Costco, there's Target, though it does come at a higher price. Well, I can't wait for you to visit Maui, and it's such a special place. I really want to recommend, again, looking into Maui Cultural Lands with Ikolu Lindsay. They actually lost their home in the Lahaina fire. They just have such a huge heart and such a giving heart. They provide opportunities for visitors to volunteer for the day in the Honokawai Valley, and it's such a beautiful place. You got to trek down into the valley, and it's some labor intensive, but if you're able, it is such a great experience just to connect with Ikolu and Auntie Punani. So I can't recommend them enough. We've actually have had listeners of the podcast reach back out to me and saying that they experienced a time in the valley and how amazing it was. Look up my buddy Garrett over at Maui Brewing Company. I say he was my buddy. He was a huge help during the whole Lahaina crisis. He was boots on the ground, and he was on weekly on the podcast during that time, giving updates, how people can support during that time. So a big shout out to Garrett Marrero for that and his heart. And congratulations, he's expecting his first kid. I saw that. So Garrett, if you're listening, congratulations, man. For more detailed planning tips or resources, you can check out the show notes or go to our website, hawaiisbesttravel.com. If you found today's episode helpful, make sure you hit follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you don't miss the next one. And until next time, my friend, as always, live with aloha. Mahalo for listening to this episode of Hawaii's Best. To stay up to date on future episodes, hit follow on your podcast app. Hawaii's Best is a production of Shorebreak Media Group with editing by Easy Podcast Solutions and music courtesy of our friends Stick Figure.